Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Putri Rahmadani as the first speaker from a group. Pertama, saya akan menjelaskan tentang history of American English. English is the most common and influential form of English worldwide, making it de facto Basantara word. Since then, American English has evolved into several new variants, including regional dialects. In some cases, have so little influence in the last 2 centuries of a wave of unified immigrant speakers mainly from European language. Dialects from many different regions of England exist in each American colony, allowing for an extensive and living process of mixing and distributing dialect in which variation of English across the colony become more homogeneous. Selanjutnya, the beginnings of American English. To underline the importance of Shakespeare according to the upcoming of American English, one has to quit that was the Elizabeth English that was shown to be taken in ship after ship across the Atlantic to the New World as the language of a unified nation, due to the fact that both writing and speech become standards first throughout the British Isles under the Jacobins. With regard to the first Britons who reached the New World, the focus laid on London, the big city with the island grids, was the hub of rumors and fables about the new country everyone talked about. In 65, the time King James Regent, 2 companies chartered by river merchant set off from London and Plymouth to fulfill their dreams of affluence and a new life. 3 ships of the London Company set sail in 66 to pass by the Azores and the Canary Islands on the southern route. They planned to head north after cruising in the West Indies to settle somewhere north of the Spanish in Florida and south of the French in Canada. Selanjutnya, comparison between British and American English. We have come to the present, some there and a half centuries after the first English was spoken on the North American continent. During the time English was born, shaping itself from the various speech of displaced Englishmen, Welshmen, Irish, and Scots, until it is obviously the most rapidly burgeoning dialect of the most rapidly expanding language. British English is the mother of her speaking. American English. The English language from the British Isles came to the new continent, and even before its arrival at the coast, it began to intermingle the language of Shakespeare, got in contact with other variants on its way to the New World. Soon a kind of melting pot, different language joined the speech communities to breed the new language. And consequently, it goes without saying, as not above, there was Irish, German, Jewish, African. On the next page, the different will become obvious, not only due to logical talk, but due to having an intense look on certain linguistic features concerning the difference between British English and American English, always referring to the standard variation. Its reference accents, RP, and General American. With regard to linguistic feature, the story dates back to the very first beginning of American English.
I want to continue in our material. One pronunciation. In general, American speakers throughout the country differ concerning their pronunciation. Many speakers from the Middle West, for example, have a nasal twang. This has the effect that the voice sounds darker and tenser. Southern speakers are known for their typical Southern drawl. British speakers, on the other hand, have a greater tension and a lesser degree of lengthening in stressed vowels at their disposal. In the following description, the usual abbreviation for the British reference action, the RP, and the American reference action, the genome will be used to stress and intonation. The stress pattern of RP and genome are generally the same. The most obvious and nearly unique difference concerns word ending in ARU, IRU, or ORU. In RP, they contain in single stressed syllable, which is the first or the second one in the word, and the second to last syllable is frequently elided. In genome, the stress runs in the reserved direction. The stress on the first syllable, and in addition, secondary stress falls on the next to last syllable. 3. Spelling and punctuation. Spelling and punctuation differences are much like the majority of differences in pronunciation. Not merely haphazard and unsystematic, they follow a certain pattern including simplification, regularization, and derivational uniformity. I will only have a quick look on this subculture. For simplification, although the genome has a greater reputation for simplification, this principle can even be found in RP, only released different. 5. Regularization. 6. Derivational uniformity. 7. Individual word difference in spelling. 8. Grammar. American English itself and its dialect. The impact on the early colonies can still be recognized, especially for British visitors to the United States. Nowadays, they often note the unmistakable 16th and early 17th century characteristics still evident in the American language. All the time of the American Revolution, and especially in the years following it, Americans gradually became conscious use of their language and still do. They regard their language as a marker of nationality, and they live and speak for patriotism. If we speak of an American English standard, we must even mention those various dialects that make up an important part of American English. American dialect. There is no recognized standard pronunciation for the whole of the United States as there is for England. For a long time, it was customary to distinguish three main dialects: the New England dialect, the Southern dialect, and General American, which refer to the rest of the country where pronunciation is particularly uniform. This approach proved wrong because each dialect could clearly be distinguished from the other. On the one hand, for example, not all of New England share in the feature said to be characteristic or part of the South were settled by people from the North and are not typically Southern in speech. On the other hand, General American shows regional difference as well. In 1949, Hans Kurrat published a world geography of the Eastern United States. He distinguished 18 speech areas, which he grouped into three main groups: Northern, Midland, and Southern, which gave a broader overview over the dialect continent. We'll have a look on 7 dialects out of Kurrat's study: the Eastern New England, the New York City, Inland Northern, the North Midland, the South Midland, the Southern, and the General American. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
English was brought to America by the British, who arrived on the America continent by the sea in the 16th and 17th countries. At that time, there was no standard spelling system. The writing method for all English words is determined only after the first dictionaries has been compiled. In Ireland, dictionaries are compiled by the linguist in London. Meanwhile, in America, the author of the dictionaries is named Noah Webster. He allegedly changed the spelling to the American spelling from the British because he wanted to show that America has a culture is independent of its home country. In terms of pronunciation, In terms of pronunciation, Anglo-American and British Ukraine, differences began to develop after the first wave of immigrants arrived in America. They speak with an accent called erotic, which is an accent that clearly pronounces the R sound. Meanwhile, the upper class society in Ireland actually softened the pronunciation of R because they want to the linguistic the way to speaking from the way of speaking or of ordinary people. Since the elite is always used an example of behavior, other members of the community also imitate the way of speaking. Finally, this way of speaking is commonly found on the system region of Ireland. Regional accent. The regional sounds of present-day American English are rapidly engaged in a complex phenomenon of both convergence and divergence. Some accents are homogenizing and leveling, while others are diversifying and deviating further away from one another, having been settled longer than the American West Coast. The East Coast has had more time to develop unique accent, and it currently comprises 3 or 4 linguistically significant regions, each of which possess English varieties both different. English varieties both different from each other as well as quite internally diverse. New Ireland, the Middle Atlantic states, including a New York accent as well, is a unique Philadelphia, Baltimore accent, and the South, as of the 20th century, the Middle and Eastern Great Lakes area. Chicago, being the last large city with these speakers, also usured in certain unique features, including the fronting of the LOT, a vowel in the mouth toward and the sing of the track vowel will sound to The sound changes have triggered a series of the vowel shift in the same region, known by linguistics as the inline north. The inline north share with the Eastern New Ireland dialect, or including Boston accent. Baker tongue positioning of the goose vowel to and at the mouth vowel to in comparison to the rest of the country, ranging from northern New Ireland across the Great Lakes to Minnesota. Another northern region marker is the variable fronting of a before r. For example, appearing 4 times in the stereotypical Boston Shibboleth park in the car his Harvard Yard.